what was meant to be just another drive on California's open highway turned into one of Hollywood's greatest tragedies. James Dean, the actor better known for his roles in some iconic movies like East of Eden and Rebel Without a Cause, had become the symbol of American youth. With his gaze set on the world of racing, he got behind the wheel of his Porsche 550 Spyder. Little did he know that fate was waiting just a few miles down the road. Join us as we cover the story of James Dean, from his early rise to untimely demise, which shook Hollywood to its core. James Brian Dean was born in the small town of Marion, Indiana, on February 8th to Mildred and Winton Dean. When James was just 4, Winton made the life-changing decision to quit farming and move to Santa Monica, California, hoping to pursue a career as a dental technician. For a while, it felt like the much-needed fresh start. However, not every beginning has a happy middle. When James was only 9, things took a serious turn. His mom, who was his comfort source, was diagnosed with uterine cancer. James watched his mom decline physically, and every day it robbed more of the light from her eyes. She died tragically in 1940, and for James, the world that he had slowly built for himself faded into silence. Winton, completely devastated and unable to take care of James all by himself, made a decision to send him back east. He started living with his aunt and uncle, Hortense and Marcus Winslow, on a farm in Fairmount, Indiana. It was quite far away from the sunny beaches and movie theaters of Santa Monica. The Winslows were Quakers, who were kind, reserved, and had a deeply rooted faith. They were the ones that structured James' life, but nothing could ever replace what he had lost. James, on the other hand, made an effort to adjust, but the sorrow remained just as ever. He had always been the quiet one, sensitive, and always the one that seemed to be thinking about something far ahead. In fact, he was more attracted to creative things like art, poetry, and motion. At Fairmount High School, James involved himself in whatever he thought would make him feel more alive. He played basketball and baseball. He joined the drama club. He started reciting poems and took part in public speaking competitions. After graduating in 1949, James went back to California, hoping to reconnect with his father. Upon his arrival, what he found wasn't the homecoming he'd imagined. His father had remarried, and whatever the closeness they once had was gone. So James shifted his thinking and discovered his hidden passion for acting. He was studying pre-law back then at Santa Monica College, but his heart wasn't in it. Eventually, he transferred to UCLA and joined the drama department. People spotted something unique about him. He landed the role of Malcolm in Macbeth among hundreds of students. The positive response from audience and inspiration from actors like Marlon Brando motivated him to quit college and pursue acting full-time. This decision, however, came at a price. To make ends meet, he took on odd jobs, such as parking attendant and even working at stores. He auditioned wherever he could, and his hard work eventually paid off. He got his first break in a Pepsi Cola commercial in 1950. After that, he soon got minor parts in some unremarkable films. Fixed Bayonets, Sailor Beware, Has Anybody Seen My Gal? But these roles left him unsatisfied. It was clear from the beginning that James wasn't just chasing fame. He wanted something that felt real. That search led him to Rogers Brackett, a radio director who became his mentor and support. Brackett gave him advice and even offered him a place to live. With Brackett's help, James moved to New York City. At that time, television was booming. Dean started landing roles in live dramas, Studio One, Kraft Television Theater, General Electric Theater. What's more, he joined the Actors Studio where he trained under Lee Strasberg. It was a home of method acting, a place where actors didn't fake emotions, they experienced them. And for James, this approach felt natural. Then a pivotal event occurred. In 1954, Elia Kazan began casting for East of Eden, a movie based on John Steinbeck's novel. He was looking for someone who could play Cal Trask, a young man full of emotion, longing, and fire. Kazan saw something in Dean. So did Steinbeck, though it took him time to warm up. But once cameras started rolling, there was no question. In fact, in one of the most powerful scenes, Dean veered off script and collapsed into his father's arms, sobbing for love. It wasn't just a performance. He was representing his own agony. When East of Eden premiered in 1955, it was clear that something extraordinary had popped up to the big screen. Audiences were captivated by a presence they had never encountered before. Sure, critics compared him to Brando, but Dean had this quiet, broken edge that made people lean in. There was a certain tenderness in Dean which struck more deeply at human hearts. This performance earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. Then came Rebel Without a Cause, the role that turned James Dean from rising star to cultural icon. As Jim Stark, he played a troubled teenager full of confusion, anger, and longing. He wasn't just acting, he was representing every teenager who ever felt misunderstood. With Natalie Wood and Sal Mineo by his side, the film tapped into struggles of American youth. The film was electric then, and it still holds that power today. After completing the rigorous shoot for East of Eden in late 1954, James Dean turned his attention away from acting and into another passion: speed. During those months, he rekindled his childhood love of automobiles and began collecting sports cars. He bought a Porsche 356 Speedster and started driving to the back roads of California. By early 1955, he began participating in actual road races. Few months later at Palm Spring, James won his first novice class race, but missed the opportunity to win the main event by very close margins. Few weeks later, in Bakersfield, he finished first in class and performed really well in the overall standings. He once said that he wanted to take on the Indianapolis 500, America's most famous race. He wanted to prove that he could compete with the fastest drivers of the era. By late May 1955, Dean made his last start in what would become his final racing season. He traveled to the Santa Barbara Road Races on Memorial Day weekend. Because he was shooting the film Giant at the time, he skipped the Saturday heats and raced only on Sunday, May 29th. That morning, he lined up in the under 1,500cc consolation race in his Porsche. The race began well, but on the fifth lap, the engine blew a piston, and he had to retire. It was a disappointing ending, but not an unusual risk of racing. Unaware that this would be the last flag Dean would ever chase, he packed up his gear and turned back to work. That summer, Dean threw himself into filming Giant. The studio insisted that he forget his racing career for a while. They worried any more crashes might delay their big production. Dean reluctantly stayed off the track while the cameras rolled. However, his passion for speed never really left him. As soon as Giant wrapped, Dean was back on the scene. In September 1955, he sold his older Porsche and bought a brand new Porsche 550 Spyder Roadster, a small, nimble racing car built for the track. He was proud of it and even jokingly painted the name Little on the car's tail, a mischievous self-reference to its power and his own rebellious spirit. Little did he know, his passion for speed would end up becoming his demise. On a clear autumn afternoon, September 30th, 1955, Dean set out for Salinas Road Races in his new Spyder. He was accompanied by Rolf Wutherich, a young German mechanic who tuned the Porsche. The plan was to drive north from Los Angeles to Salinas, passing through the hills of Central California. Along the way, the group stopped for gas and were even ticketed for speeding near Bakersfield, a minor nuisance, but Dean just grinned and paid the fines. He was eager to get to the races and to log some miles in the new car. By late afternoon, Dean was driving the little silver car along Highway 466 west of Bakersfield. The road climbed over the Antelope Grade toward the tiny community of Shellam. Suddenly, a dark Ford Tudor driven by a young college student, Donald Turnipseed, pulled abruptly onto the highway from the north. Dean saw the Ford veer across his lane. There was barely time to react. He slammed the brakes and swerved, but the Spyder T-boned the Ford almost head-on. Witnesses saw Dean's silver Spyder flip into the air and slam onto the pavement. Wutherich was thrown from the car and barely managed to survive the fall. However, Dean wasn't as lucky. He got trapped below the wreckage. People immediately called for help, but by the time medics arrived, James was unresponsive. Doctors later found he had suffered a broken neck and fatal internal injuries. He was taken to the small hospital in Paso Robles, but arrived without vital signs. At 5:59 p.m. that afternoon, September 30th, 1955, James Dean, at the age of 24, was pronounced dead. News of the crash spread fast. Hollywood was stunned to learn that the young star of Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden was gone. Fans across America mourned. On October 8, 1955, a funeral was held at the Fairmount Friends Church. Mourners filled every pew, and a crowd nearly 4 times the town's population lined the streets outside. Dean's coffin remained closed. The damage he suffered was too severe to see. Friends, colleagues, and admirers paid their last respects as he was laid to rest in the family cemetery back in Fairmount. In 1960, just 5 years after his death, he was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Decades later, in 1999, the American Film Institute ranked him as the 18th greatest male movie star of Hollywood's golden age. The spot on California Highway 46 near Chelam, where Dean died, has become a place of pilgrimage. In 1977, a memorial was placed there, a stylized stainless steel sculpture wrapped around a small tree of heaven growing by the roadside. The junction of Highways 46 and 41 was officially named the James Dean Memorial Junction on the 50th anniversary of his death in 2005. Even now, the story of Dean and his little lives on in pop culture. He once said, "Dream as if you'll live forever. Live as if you'll die today." And maybe that's exactly what he did. He lived on the edge of something unknowable, chasing truth in every gesture, every glance. He burned fast, died young, and never faded.